Whether you're doing a good deed or doing someone dirty, one thing is for sure. Karma will make its way back to you. This video is full of stories that prove what goes around comes around. And my favorite is the tale about a rude guy's proposal that went so horribly wrong, you'd almost feel bad for him. If he wasn't such a jerk. I used to clean a local gymnastics facility on the weekend. The owner would rent out the place for birthday parties, and one of the coaches was always present for them. One weekend, I saw a car pull up about an hour before the party was to start. I was just finishing up cleaning the lobby, and we had the power off so the maintenance men could replace some bulbs. This woman burst in and headed upstairs without saying a word to me. About 10 seconds later, she came storming down the stairs, got in my face, and started yelling, "Why is there no power? I'm supposed to set up for this party. How am I supposed to do that when I can't see what I'm doing?" I was a little stunned and told her that, per the owner's policy, she couldn't be in the building until the coach arrived. Her face went purple. She yelled, "How dare you tell me what I can and cannot do? The owner said I could be here whenever I wanted. I won't take this garbage from some stupid kid." I said, "Fine, but your power won't be on for another 45 minutes. You might as well go wait in your car until the coach gets here." She stomped off, tried to slam the door, and proceeded to try and call the owner. When the coach finally arrived, I told her what had happened and how she acted towards me. I also left a note for the owner and called her to inform her. I left the gym and went home for the night. The following day, I went in to get paid. The owner pulled me aside and told me I did everything right in that situation. Then I got the whole story. I found out that not only was that lady completely nasty to the coach as well, but that she didn't pay for the party, and she stayed a full hour longer than what was rented. But when the parents were all inside, her dog had gotten into the cake that was in her car and ate about half of it. She then said, "Oh, we can still use it. We'll just cut around the parts the dog ate." 40 minutes later, she came running back into the gym, grabbed a bunch of paper towels, and returned to her car. Within that time that she brought the cake inside to the time she went back out, her dog had pooped and puked everywhere in the car. On the seats, floors, armrests, even the dashboard. The car was covered. Well, I do feel bad for the poor dog who got wrapped up in this tale of instant karma, but you can't really argue with the results. I'd like to think that she realized it was all her own fault as she cleaned up her car, but it's so rare for people who are this entitled to recognize the error of their ways. I remember taking a road trip through Ohio during a blizzard. I was used to driving in the snow, but this was so bad I could hardly make out where I was going. The roads were empty. Since my car wasn't really fantastic, I was chugging along at a slow pace in the right lane because I wasn't in that big of a hurry, and I didn't want to crash. Suddenly, a fully loaded truck blew past me in the left lane, kicking up a bunch of snow against my car and whiting out my windshield. I was flying blind for a few moments while my wipers got rid of the snow. When I could see again, I noticed the guy seemed to have slowed down and kept pace next to me. Then he slowed down more, revved his engine, and proceeded to do it again. He got his kicks off of harassing smaller cars, and there wasn't anything I could do. There weren't any exits to get off, and I didn't want to speed up in such bad conditions. After blasting me 3 or 4 more times, he sped off. I spent the next half hour grumbling about this jerk on the phone to my friends. While chatting, I spotted something. The interstate took a sharp turn, and off the road on the left, there was a truck flipped, half buried in snow. It was him. Driving during a snowstorm, not to mention navigating near huge trucks, is nerve-wracking enough without any weird creeps trying to mess with you. I mean, I hope the guy was okay in the end, but what a way to learn a lesson about bullying cautious drivers. How are you going to explain that one to the insurance? When I was a teenager, I lived out of my car because I couldn't get an apartment since no one would rent to a 16-year-old. It was an old beater, and I had to push start it everywhere. I had just pulled into Walmart to buy some decent clothes, and there was a purse in the basket of the cart next to mine. When I opened it, I saw that there was $1,000 in cash, several credit cards, and an ID. I wanted to spend it. I grabbed the cash and put the purse back in the cart. Except when I was paying for my clothes, I just couldn't bring myself to pay with the money I had taken. In the end, I paid with mine and went back to my car. The purse was still there, so I put the money back in and looked at the address. It was right down the road, but it took me about an hour to find. When I finally got there, I parked in the street. The lady was standing in her garage next to her nice new car, in a fancy neighborhood, on the phone, canceling her credit cards. I walked up and asked if she had lost her purse. I looked pretty rough, and I could tell she was a bit nervous. I handed it to her and told her I had to open it to find her address. She mumbled a thanks, and I got in my car and left. I was kind of bummed out because it seemed like she didn't appreciate it. I went on to where I worked and where I would stay in my car. The next day before my shift, I went to McDonald's for breakfast. I got to work. Then I noticed something strange. I saw the same lady leaving. I thought that wasn't her, just a coincidence. When I went inside, some parts I needed for my car were there, along with $100 and a note saying thanks. I was confused. I couldn't figure out how she knew what parts I needed or even where I worked. It took me a few days to realize what had really happened. A week before, I had gone over what I needed for my car, along with a number to the parts store, and wrote it down on the back of a pay stub. When I got out near her house, this paper fell out of my car. After I left, she picked it up. When she realized all her money was in her purse, she went down and picked up the parts and dropped them off for me. It was 100% the nicest thing anyone has ever done for me. I got about $300 worth of parts and $100 cash. The good feeling I had for weeks was worth way more than the money I would have made if I had kept it all. As fun as it is to read stories about jerks who paid the price for their bad behavior, I just love a good karma story. It's so refreshing to read about people who really did the right thing and the amazing ways they saw it come back to them. It was really thoughtful of this lady to not only give the person who found her wallet a cash reward, but also to help them out with what I'm sure were some much-needed car parts. It was early in the morning and I was driving home from a New Year's party. It was dark out. The road was icy and extremely foggy. The streets were twisty and narrow, and the likelihood of deer crossing the road was high, so I was driving very slowly with my fog lights and hazards on. About halfway home, some person peeled out of a side street and started tailgating me. They were flashing their high beams, honking their horn, apparently in hopes that I would speed up or pull over. Given the road conditions and poor visibility, I declined to do either. I figured that when the road widened in a couple of miles, I would pull to the side and let the person pass. Otherwise, they could take their chances and pass me on the left. I made an awful miscalculation. For 4 very tense miles, instead of passing, this dirtbag tailed me, weaving back and forth, shouting out the window. The fog was swirling around, my car was slipping on black ice, and I was worried that a deer would come bounding across the road at any moment. Just as the road widened into 2 lanes, and before I could pull over, the driver decided they had enough. They screeched out from around me, narrowly missing my car, while passengers hung out the windows, shouting and throwing bottles and cans at me. When the last can bounced off the hood of my car, I pulled over and wished I could destroy their car with the power of my mind. Fortunately, karma was on the job. A state trooper, who'd been lurking in the darkness, pulled out and sped after them. By the time I crept by them, he had all 4 of them face down on the ground with their hands behind their backs. If I had been in this person's shoes, I probably would have pulled out, gotten out the car, and done a little victory dance in front of those psychos as they got arrested. I worked at a pizza place during college. We sold some beverages out of a fountain machine and others in a can. One day, this lady in a business suit came in acting a little frantic. She wanted soda in a can, but wasn't happy with our selection. She got pretty nasty when I told her we only sold Coca-Cola out of the fountain. She left the store mad and went across the street to a little hot dog stand to see about buying her drink there. They had it in a can, but apparently at a price she did not want to pay. So she came storming back to my pizza joint and snottily said, "The Coke across the street was too expensive, so I have to settle for your fountain soda." She wanted 6 of them. She got even angrier when I offered her a choice of 12 or 32-ounce cups, and even more aggravated when I told her we didn't have any carrying trays. However, I offered to get her a box to carry them all. She was just flat out unhappy that she had to deal with this. To make things worse, we had a faulty batch of soda cups that day. About every 10th cup had a pinhole in it. I did not know that, as I had just started shift when this woman first came in. Wouldn't you know it, but this woman in her business suit got one of the defective cups and soda sprayed all over the front of her suit. I was sure she thought we did it on purpose. I apologized, then offered her a wet rag and a replacement cup. But when she finally walked out the door, my boss and I had the biggest laugh. There are some people in this world you just can't win with. Luckily, that's where karma comes in. Although the faulty cup thing is pretty unfortunate, I absolutely would have loved to see the look on this woman's face as she sprayed herself with soda. I wonder if at any point she realized that this was all her own fault for being so rude. Before we were married, I went out to dinner with my wife and her dad. He can be really rude. At the end of dinner, my father-in-law offered to pay for the meal. My wife asked to get her leftovers boxed to take them home. Her father was being difficult and started in on her, saying, "Well, you'll just leave them in the fridge, then they'll just get thrown out." Stuff like that. It was beyond pushy. I told him, "Listen, it's not your fridge, leave her alone." He got mad and yelled, "Don't tell me how to raise my daughter." I yelled back at him not to speak to her in his nasty tone. As a result, he threw the bill at me and said, "Fine, you pay then," and stormed out. We were all mad at that point, and my wife said, "Why did you have to start something?" I paid the bill and was waiting for the receipt, but we were waiting for quite some time. Tensions were rising. Her dad was waiting outside, building up steam. I asked the waiter, "Can I just get our bill and go?" They replied, "Oh no, sir, you have to wait for the manager." It turned out they had a contest running where every bill was a winner of some prize or another. Usually, people would win a free drink or appetizer. However, we had just won the grand prize that dinner, which was a trip for 4 to Florida. And here's the kicker. Whoever pays gets the prize. Because her dad stormed out like a child, I won it. Turns out that sometimes karma comes in the form of a free trip to Florida. I can only imagine what the scene out in the parking lot was like once dear old dad realized what he'd missed out on by storming out. Now that is something I would pay to see. Many years ago, I sold furniture and was terrible at it. Since I worked solely on commission, I barely made any money. Pretty regularly, I had nothing left after paying rent and bills and wouldn't eat for days because I couldn't afford to. One day, I was trying to sell furniture and sold nothing, so I made $0. This old couple came in to look at TV stands. All the other sales reps avoided them. We all knew that they would take up a bunch of time and end up buying something for around $100, so the commission was going to be $2. There'd be no add-ons because no one in their right mind would purchase a $29.99 extended warranty on a $100 item. I figured I had nothing to lose if I helped them, and maybe my luck would turn around. They ended up buying 2 stands, but couldn't put them together themselves because they were elderly. There was a service I could have referred them to for a fee, but I was desperate and didn't want to lose the sale, especially after having spent around 45 minutes with them. I really needed this. So I told them, "I'm off at 9 p.m. If you come to pick me up, I'll set up the stands for you for free." They took the offer, paid for the furniture, and left. The other sales reps laughed at me. The old couple picked me up promptly at 9 p.m. I loaded the boxes into their trunk. As we drove to their house, I found out that he was a retired judge and she had always been a housewife. We got into their beautiful condo, and I started assembling the furniture. I could smell food cooking and tried to ignore it, but I hadn't eaten in about 3 days at that point, so it was hard. I worked for almost 3 hours straight. I then moved the finished product into position and moved their TVs for them. It was close to midnight, and I was trying to excuse myself from their home politely. The old lady grabbed me and took me to the kitchen. She sat me down and pulled out a plate of freshly made roast beef. That was better than any money. I couldn't believe it. I held back tears as I ate the delicious home-cooked meal. It was now after 12:30 a.m. I thanked them again for all that they had done for me. But it wasn't even over yet. I was about to leave to find my way home by bus, but the old man offered me a ride home. The lady packaged up the rest of the roast beef and told me to keep the container. They both came for the ride, and I couldn't stop thanking them for helping me. As the car stopped and I got out, I thanked them one more time. Then the lady handed me an envelope. I didn't open it, just thanked them. I happily went up to my apartment, knowing that I would sleep with a full stomach that night and that I would get to eat for the next few days. I was feeling great. I opened the envelope and burst into tears. There was a thank you card with $100 inside. After that, for the rest of the time that I sold furniture, I always ran to help the people nobody else wanted to. I changed my focus from getting a big sale every day to getting the small ones nobody else cared about, and it got me through until I got a better paying job. This story really brings a tear to my eye. It's so hard to work a job like this that is all based on commission, especially if you're not a naturally pushy person. I also know how it feels to be on the other end and be ignored by salespeople who think you might not be worthy of their attention. I'm so glad this person got rewarded for their good deed. My friend and I were having a drink on this nice big patio at an oceanside bar. A middle-aged couple was sitting next to us. Our tables were next to each other, and they were relatively close to us. As my buddy and I were just taking in the view, he caught eyes with the dude and said something innocuous like, "Good evening." Apparently, that was the wrong thing to say. The guy retorted, "Mind your own business and keep your eyes to yourself." My buddy and I looked at each other with a "did that just happen" expression. My buddy looked back over at him and said something like, "Relax, buddy, sorry to bother you." At that point, we were a little put off. We got back to our drinks and enjoyed the sunset. 2 minutes later, the guy pulled out a ring for his partner. It was a large diamond. She was excited, and he had a sufficiently smug, self-satisfied look on his face. She went to hand it back to him, but when he grabbed it, he fumbled. It fell to the floor, rolled an inch or two, and then promptly disappeared, falling between two slats of the deck. I felt bad for the woman. The guy's face went white and then immediately red. He was barely able to maintain his composure. It looked like he wanted to hit his lady friend. The dude looked over at us, and now we were looking straight at him. We just smiled casually. He called the waiter over and started discreetly explaining what had happened. He wanted someone to pull up the deck slats. However, that was not going to happen. The waiter was cool as ice. Despite the guy raging at this point, the waiter flatly told him something to the effect of, "Look, man, you can come back tomorrow and talk to the manager, or pay your bill and leave now." The guy sat down. His lady friend was visibly shaken. While enjoying our drinks and the sunset, my friend and I remarked about how karma's great. But when it's instant, it's almost like magic. Oof. Like I said before, you'd almost feel bad for the guy if he hadn't been such a complete and total jerk to two strangers for no reason. It's rare that you get to watch karma work that instantaneously. But when it does happen that way, it's incredibly satisfying. That's the last tale of instant karma we have for you today. But check out the rest of our channel for plenty more stories of jerks being put in their place.